And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Ray Catania, who before his near-death experience was an atheist and then afterwards came back a believer. Ray, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Jeff, thank you. It is an honor and a privilege to be here with you today.
Well, Ray, we're excited to have you. And if you don't mind, let's start with your NDE and go from there.
Okay, sure. Let me mention that before the NDE that I was an atheist and I chose to rebel away from my family's Christian learnings. It didn't really resonate well with me. And also, I would say that I didn't have a particularly great childhood. It was a little rough in my early years. And, you know, to say the least, there was a lot of arguing and such that went on in my home and fighting. So I rebelled against Christianity and firmly believed that there could not be anything higher. There could not be no higher power, and lived that life until the age of 20. When I was 20, there was a fire in my home, and I'm still living at home with my parents at this time. My bedroom is located directly above the kitchen, which is obviously where the stove was, and the stove was leaking gas. And as we know, gas rises, and so the gas was going right into my room. The next morning, I suppose my mom got up, turned on the stove, and it went poof, and you have this, big flame that went out rather quickly because they actually have a safety valve so that doesn't get out of control. The wall was burning, but it wasn't the smoke or the fire that affected me. It was the gas. And that had been rising into my room for we don't know how many hours it was. So I heard the fire trucks, the policemen downstairs, and I said, I had to get up out of bed. What is going on? What's happening? And I found that I could not move. Most of my body was paralyzed. I couldn't lift my legs. I couldn't raise my head off the pillow, and I couldn't yell. I mean, even my jaw, I could not move it. The one thing I could move was my right arm. And what I did was I grabbed the edge of the bed and started to pull myself to the edge of the bed to get out of it. And I would move a couple of inches. It's hard to move your whole body with just, one arm, but I was fighting to do this to the best of my ability, and I pass out again. And then the noise downstairs would wake me up, and then I would pull a little bit more, and then I passed out again. Now, by the third time, I know if I don't get out of this bed, I'm gone. I mean, I know there's something significantly wrong with me, and this is serious. I just don't know what it is. So I pull with everything I have to get out of that bed, and I make it to the edge, and I guess I tumbled out. And just as I was about to hit the floor, I'm face down when I hit the floor, I don't feel the pain of hitting the floor. Because at that moment in time, I was not in that body. At that point, I was above my body. I was in the corner of the room, and I was looking down at my lifeless body. And I don't know what to make of this immediately, but it feels good. Why would it feel good? You look in hindsight, why would that feel good? Because there's this white light, huge white cone-shaped light that was shining only on me. It felt like a spotlight. And this light carried with it energy that I could never describe in any human terms. It's a euphoria that went through every fiber of my being. And I wanted to go into the light. And I did go into the light. I started to go in, and there was a being at the end of the light. I'm not prepared to say who it was because I really don't know. I couldn't tell you male or female. I couldn't tell you what he or she looked like, but they were saying, Ray, it's safe to come into the light. It's okay. And as I went in farther and farther, the euphoria increased and increased. And in this moment, this is fantastic. This is like the greatest feeling I've ever had. But here's what happens next. My father comes running in the room and he scoops me up and he's screaming and crying for the paramedics. Come help my son, come help my son. And he's yelling. Now, I didn't have a great relationship with my father, as I kind of just alluded to earlier. In fact, that might have been the only time he ever hugged me that I can even remember, is when I'm dead. So I wanted that with my dad. And so I asked, more or less, I said, I can't leave my dad like that. Can I please go back? And when I did, I was not in the bedroom anymore. I woke up on the living room floor on my back with the paramedics on top of me. I imagine they were doing CPR. They had all their gadgets and tools and whatnot and doing their stuff. And one was saying to the other, we got to get this guy in right away. But where's the truck? Bring the truck up, meaning the ambulance. And I'm like, guys, I feel fantastic. I feel great. You don't understand. This is amazing. You know, and I said, did you see the light? Did you hear the voice? And they start looking at me like, we got to do a talk screen on this guy. Maybe he's, you know. So I shut up because I decide that if I keep talking like this, I'm going to go to the wrong hospital, right? This is something that even when I told family members, it was not believed. When I told other people, it was not believed. So they took me to the hospital. From what I understand, there were 4 more times that I had to be resuscitated, 3 or 4, I'm not sure, in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. And I only know that because my mother, who denied this from happening, and I could see why, it's very traumatic. I died on her watch. So she denied it for a very long time. And it was just when I published the first book and it came out that she admitted it and said, we had a bonding moment. She apologized and, told me that there were 3 or 4 more times in the ambulance that it also occurred. I can only recall 1. So afterwards, there's this confusion that's really going through me, right? I want to better define what transpired. And I start to look it up, but there's no internet, there's no computers now. So I have to go to the library and get a book. I mean, that's what we had, or you could talk to someone, but we didn't have an internet that we could just Google what is an NDE. First of all, I didn't even know what an NDE was, nor did I believe in an afterlife. So here's the way I chalked this up to myself. I said, okay, this is what happened. You fell in front of a window on what was probably a sunny day, and the sun was shining, and there's your white light. You inhaled gas fumes for hours, and so you were hallucinating everything else that you saw. Done. I could remain an atheist, and everything was easy. But as the years go on, I don't fear death because I think in the back of my mind, I know that was a near-death experience. But I start to put myself in precarious situations where I could die. I manifested a car accident because I understood that if you had an accident, back then you could sue and get a lot of money. So I drove my car into a divider. I didn't mean to do this, but I was thinking, how can I have an accident and get hurt and make some money? And if you can manifest good things, you can manifest bad things. But I would put myself in these situations. I worked for some very bad people who, if there was a gunshot in a nightclub, that was just a Tuesday. And I would get out of it. There was always that being that was there to guide me out of the situation or tell me what to do. Even in the car accident, it was get down, duck under the dash, which is what I did. I didn't even have a seatbelt on, and that wasn't a law yet, and it was curled up. So whatever it was, the situation that I was in, for some reason, and I don't know why, I'm not special, I don't particularly deserve any of this, I don't know what it is or why this being looked out for me, but they did in a big way. And I tell those stories of the those actual near deaths, those are brushes with death, but those are really near deaths. That was a real death that occurred when I was 20 years old. So I continue to put myself in these situations as I process what had happened. And like I said, I can't tell anybody, because if I do, the one or two times that I did, the first, my mother said it never happened. I said it at the dinner table. She said, absolutely not. That's not the way it happened. Okay. I'm going to leave that be. I'm not going to argue with it. There's no point. And another time I told some friends, and they're like, yeah. I got two reactions when I said it to my friends. One was the Me Too thing. Oh yeah, that happened to me. Oh yeah, that happened to me. Oh yeah, that happened to me. Okay. So I'm not getting anywhere here. There's no way everybody at the table had an NDE. And then the other one was, you're out of your mind. You're just kidding around. You don't know what you're talking about. That can't happen, and et cetera, et cetera. They've proven that that's impossible medically, and yada, yada, yada. So I just closed the book. I just let it be for many, many, many years. But here's what happened. Before I had the NDE, because I had that troubled childhood, I used to isolate myself. And it was kind of a form of meditation. But what I was doing as a kid is I was hiding from what was going on in the household. And I would just stare at the same wall for hours and hours and hours, day after day after day, until I would go to sleep, or everybody else would first. And that went on for years. And when you isolate yourself and ultimately put yourself in a meditative state 6 hours a day, 7 days a week, you're going to start to see more than just the wall. You can start to see the energy that makes up the wall. So I had this bond with energy. I could see it. I could feel it. I could somehow know things about people that I should not have known. And I carried that up until the day of the NDE. Now, when I cross over, those energies come back with me. And I'll tell you how I know this. I moved out 2 years later. I got my own bachelor pad, and I was like, psych, this is great. I'm going to have parties and chicks and blah, blah, blah. None of that ever happened. Every time I came home to my apartment, it was filled with energy. And these energies were deceased consciousness that had passed on, that are there. I don't see them with my eyes. I don't hear them with my ears. I would be schizophrenic, but I know they're there. And it's all because of what I can see here in my third eye, what I can feel, what I can intake, what I can decode. Now it's on another level, but I'm still in denial. I'm telling these things, get out. I don't believe in you. Get out of my house. And they're driving me crazy. And they can mess with electricity. So I would turn the TV on, they would turn it off or change the channel. I was on the phone, they would cut the signal. And these are landlines. We don't have cell phones yet. These are landlines. I must have called a maintenance guy 40, 50 times to come up and check everything electrical in my whole apartment. And he's like, listen, kid, you're nuts. There's nothing wrong here. Don't call me again. I'm not coming back up. So here I am. I'm nuts again. Okay, I'm going to suppress this. I move out because eventually it becomes impossible to sleep in that apartment. They are just so intrusive. It's the vibrations that really keep you awake. They vibrate at different levels, if you will. And it's intrusive to my body because they're commingling with my energy and making me shake. And I'll get to how I know all this later. But right now, I'm just scared. I start using tons of alcohol and drugs so that I can sleep. And should have died from a drug overdose or an alcohol poisoning. But again, did not. Moved to a new place. I was like, okay, this is going to be the place. This is where we're going to have the parties. This is going to be great. I'm going to have my friends. I'm going to have girls, blah, blah, blah. Don't you know it? The same thing happens in the next place. 2 houses are not haunted. Ray is. They're going to come with me if I go to Siberia. Now I don't know what to do with this. More drugs, more alcohol, more drugs, more alcohol, put myself in more dangerous situations, up the ante. So it's not until I get married around the age of 30 and I have 2 children of my own that I now have a reason for living. So the carefree Ray that didn't care if he lived or died has to live for these 2 tiny humans that I'm responsible for. I basically have to get my you-know-what together. So I checked myself into rehab, and I said, I gave him the keys. Don't let me out until I'm ready to go. And my marriage fell apart very, very quickly. And after it fell apart, I didn't date for a very, very long time. Eventually I would, but it was many years later. I had so much self-doubt. I went back to college. I got my degree. I started working what you would call a regular job. I worked in Manhattan. I had a great job. I moved my way up the ladder. I came back to Jersey. I worked for even a larger company, worked my way up the ladder. I was at the top of my game. I'm single. I've got 2 kids, and I've learned to deal with the beings. There was an understanding. Okay. So as this is happening, like I said, I start to date, and I'm looking on different websites because that's how people date nowadays, right? So I come across this one in particular, and when you're about to sign up, if you've ever been on one, and I'm not saying you have, but they give you some examples of people that you might like. And there was this one woman, and I said, oh my God, that's going to be my wife. And so I joined that website, and I sent one email, just one, to her, and I told her, I'm only sending one email. It's to you, and that's because you're my future wife. And I said it in a funny way. She thought it was funny. So she gets back to me. We are married till today, ever since that email. And we had an amazing relationship, but in the beginning of it, one of the questions we ask each other when we get serious or start to get serious is, she says, what are your spiritual beliefs? And I'm like, I have no idea. I've been meaning to get around to that, but it always takes a back seat to something else. She says, she says, I'm going to buy you a spiritual clearing for your birthday. And I'm like, okay, great. I don't even know what this is. We're going to have cake, right? There'll be cake. Yeah, there'll be cake. She says, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to show up. She's going to call you and tell you when she's going to do it. It's done by distance, and just don't have any appointments on that day. And I said, okay, I won't. And I went along with it. And the woman calls me, tells me the process, what to do, what not to do. She says, you might feel off for a couple of days. Okay, no problem. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. And I just hang up the phone. She does something. She calls me back. She says, okay, it's done. Now don't make any big life changes in the next 48 hours or so. And I said, okay, I won't. Click. Where's my cake? And within hours, I start to feel off. I start to feel the feelings that I remember when I first moved into that apartment, that shakiness, and I can't get rid of it. It's about a week later, on the weekend, this is the first time I can actually see a man's face and body who's not really in front of me. And again, I'm seeing it in here, not with my eyes. He's not really there. I can't reach out and touch him, but I can see him in my third eye very, very clearly. And he is front and center, and he's giving me a message. The message was, I effed up. I made a mistake. You can help her. I cannot. I don't know what that means. I don't know who the man is. The message continues every hour on the hour. Now, it's really starting to get to me. It's interfering with my job. It's interfering with my life. It starts on a Friday. I go home. They say, are you okay? I said, I'm just going to go lay down. I got a headache. I go home. And the next day, Saturday, it gets worse. It's every half hour. Now, I don't know if these times are exact. By Sunday, it seemed like it was every 5 minutes. This man would not leave. I couldn't function anymore. I remember being in the store and I was trying to pay for my stuff that was on the counter. And I don't know what I did. I must have froze or something. And the lady goes, "Are you okay, sir?" And I said, no, I'm really not. And I went back to my car and I sat there. And this was a defining moment for me, because I was like, all right, this is it. I'm insane. I'm going to have to get my affairs in order for my children. I have my will written. I'm thinking, okay, I have a DNR. I gave it to my brother. I got to make sure he still has that. I got to make some calls, and I'm preparing for the end. Now, what do I do with this woman who I love? How do I tell her this? She, to add to everything else, she is by trade a doctor of psychology and neuropsychology. Can't make this stuff up. So I'm debating on whether or not to tell her, or do I just break up with her? And then finally I'm thinking, you know what? She's going to run for the hills anyway when I tell her this, but she might be able to give me the help I need, or point me in a direction of a doctor who can help me. So I finally get the courage to tell her. And the response that I got from her was nothing like I expected. I expected, here's a phone number of a very good doctor, call him and never call me again. And that's not what I got. In fact, what she said to me was, she goes, "That's probably my dad." And I said, "What?" She goes, "Well, my dad died many years ago, and he comes through. I've seen a few mediums." Remember, she bought me the spiritual clearing, so she's more familiar with this than I know. And she says, "You're probably just a psychic medium and you don't know it." A what? A medium? What the heck is a medium? I don't know what these things are. And she says, "It's not that big of a deal. So what's the message?" So I give her the message. I said, he says, "I effed up. I made a mistake. You can help her. I cannot." And she takes the message. She doesn't really know what it means instantly, but I tell her what the guy looks like. And I said, "He doesn't look like your dad," because I saw that picture that's on the mantle, and that it doesn't look like him. The guy I'm seeing, he's husky. He's got a full beard and mustache, thick black hair. I don't think it's the guy. And she goes, "Oh, that picture, he was cleaned up. It was 20 years ago. You know, he lost 40 pounds. Let me show you what he looks like on a day-to-day. And right before he died, here you go." And I was like, "Oh my God, you know that man?" She goes, "Yeah, it's my dad, silly." And now I don't know what to do. With insanity, at least I knew what I had to do. Now I don't know what I am, who I am. She says, "A medium is coming to town. There's this big medium who she's not normally in New Jersey. She's going to be in Jersey. Let's set up a couple of meetings and you guys can talk and you can tell her what you see." I said, "Okay, that's fair. Let's do it." By the way, as soon as I gave her the message, it was gone. He wasn't bothering me anymore. He wasn't even there. It was like a weight came off my shoulders as soon as I delivered the message, because obviously that's what I was supposed to do, was give her the message. And this message, mind you, leads to saving someone's life eventually. And the whole story is in the book. It's a little bit long, but that was a message that ultimately saved someone's life. So imagine the first message I get, if I am this medium thing, is one of life and death. And so I meet with the medium, and she says to me, "Do you want to go in first or should I go in first?" I said, "I'm going in first. Otherwise, I'm not going to go in at all because I'm petrified." So I sat down and I said, "Hi, I'm Ray." And she paused and went, "Oh, you're that Ray." And I said, "What is that? What's that, Ray?" And she goes, "Just have a seat and tell me what's going on." And I said, "Well, I see things and I'm crazy." She goes, "Tell me what you see." And I told her what I see. "And tell me how you see it." I told her how I see it. "What do you feel first? What do you feel second? What happens third?" And I gave her this information, and she goes, "Relax. You're not crazy. They thought I was crazy too. You're a medium." And that was a relief in the moment. But later on, what do I do with this? Right? So I wind up leaving her office feeling a little bit better. And I remember kind of having this bonding moment. I told her about 2 other types of premonitions that I get. And she's like, yeah, that's clairvoyance. That's this. I get that. She goes, it's very rare that a guy has all of these. And I was like, shrug my shoulders. I don't know. I didn't even know what they were. And so we leave there. Oh, I remember. And what I wanted to say was, I asked her, I said, what's the question that bothers you the most that you get all the time? And at the same time, we looked at each other and go, how do you know that? And I said, I don't know. I don't know how the hell I know anything. She goes, me too. Because most of my life, I would just say something and I would know this. And somebody would say, how do you know that? And I was like, I don't know, but you could verify it. And I still don't know where I got it from. And she had a very similar life. And her parents actually thought she was crazy and put her into an institution. So she had it rough. They didn't, and I'm like, I'm right there with you. My parents, they don't believe anything. So we left the office and I felt a lot better. But still, I didn't know what to do. What are my obligations now? What am I supposed to do with this? So I start writing these things down. And I'm also being treated by a psychologist for PTSD now because I need to work out some of those issues from my past as well. And I start writing. And that writing actually is molded today into the first book, The Atheist and The Afterlife. And so at this point in my life, I go back to college to learn metaphysics. I have 2 mentors. She was my first mentor, that woman that I told you about. And then eventually a year later, I had another mentor. And the way I got him was very ironic. It was my birthday. We went away for my birthday. We do something where we go away somewhere for my birthday. And something always transpires that's huge. This particular year was 1 year after the fact that I knew that I was a medium. And she had not a photo, but a drawing of her father. And I said, oh, wow, that's cool. Where'd you get that? She goes, this is the first medium I saw. And he's a spirit artist and he drew my dad. And I said, that's exactly the way I see him. I mean, that shirt and everything. I was like, who is this guy? I have to meet this guy. So we search him online, and on the front of his website, it says, now applications are being accepted for a 2-year mentorship program with Medium Joe. Apply by February 15th. That's the deadline. That's my birthday. She's like, are you going to apply? I said, yeah. If that's not universal intervention, I don't know what the hell is. So I apply. And after you apply, you get another application. And after you get another application, you get about 4 more. And then finally, you get an interview. You have to prove beyond any shadow of a doubt that you're legit. And if you can't answer the questions, and they're all essay questions, then he will not accept you. So I'm going through the process, and I never heard from him. So I just figured, I'm not real. I'm not a medium. I'm back to denial. This is not real. This is all, a bunch of crap. And I call his assistant just to check on the application. And I said, I hadn't heard anything. So I guess, I didn't get it. She goes, no. There's hundreds of applications. He's got to go through them. Just be patient with us. I said, okay, no problem. Now, here's the integrity of this man. He had hundreds of applications. The fee for this program was in the thousands of dollars. Not cheap at all. He could have accepted everybody. But when I eventually was chosen and I got into that class, there were 11 of us that made it out of hundreds of applications. That told me 2 things. 1, about his integrity, and 2, that I must be real. So I was with him for 2 years, and he changed my entire life. He is one of the greatest men I've ever met in my entire life. I've been with him ever since. I still will study with him, but I had to give up mediumship because it was too much for my own, the happiness that I just found in my life. My first half of my life there was no happiness. It was chaos, violence, trauma. And I just had this spiritual awakening, and I wanted to enjoy the good feeling that comes of that. And I respect any medium in the world because it's such difficult work. You're taking on the deceased energy, which is coming to you with guilt, and it's coming to you with these feelings of remorse often. And it's not, although you're giving the sitter something that they really need and it's fulfilling, it's very taxing because I have to sit with that energy long after they're gone. So, and that's difficult because it takes me an hour or sometimes 2 hours to go back to being me. And it just became too much. So I let that go. And I decided to teach people how to have their own spiritual awakening. Excuse me. And that's what the second book is. You're Still Alive Now, Act Like It. And the title comes from Live Every Day as though it's your last. Enjoy every day. Don't worry about the little things in life. They don't matter. If there's one thing I took away from the NDE, things that we worry about don't matter. Things that matter, love, your children, your spouse. These are things that matter, not what you drive, not what you wear, not how you look. I just had a completely different perspective, and I couldn't go back to doing that type of work. So I started coaching. I started a coaching practice. I'm honored that it does very well. And I'm going to continue to write books, and there'll be a third book that'll be coming out. The one thing about the books now, since I am approaching my doctorate in metaphysics, is metaphysics brings science and spirituality together. And I needed that because as a former atheist and being my own biggest skeptic, I needed proof, enough proof for myself to believe in what was happening. And it obviously took me 15, 20 years to really be convinced that everything was real. So the book, the way it's written is, there will be a spiritual concept, how I dealt with that concept or how I put it to use, how I utilized it, and what the outcome was. And then I'll show you what's behind the curtain. How does that work? I studied not only metaphysics, but I also studied physics. And I studied Einstein, Niels Bohr. I studied Hubble. I studied Tesla, you name it. And I just became a voracious reader and study. I would spend my entire day doing this. I walked away from a great job, just left. And to pursue this, to give this to other people, because I struggled so much. I fought for everything in my life. And now I realize you don't have to fight for anything. My mentor said to me, he goes, you're always fighting. You're always trying to go upstream. Just stand still. The fish will come down. Take the ones you like, let the others go. And I was like, wow, that's such a great way to think of things. I don't have to fight. I don't have to struggle. I don't have to worry about half the things, more than half, 90% of the things that I worry about are nonsense. And coming to that understanding was when I knew I fractured my ego in a huge way, I lost my anger. And I lost that emotion. And this is how it happened. Or I was training myself to lose it. So every time it would arise, I would push it back down and remind myself, you don't need to feel this way. Eckhart Tolle teaches us, right? The awareness is at the top of consciousness. Why? Because we're one of the few creatures that can actually be aware that we're having a thought or we're having an emotion. And if you're aware of those things, then guess what? You can change them. You can choose them. They are not done unto you. You do them to you. No one can change you. No one can alter your emotion unless you allow that to happen. That was something I would never have understood. But now here I am this particular day, I'm driving my car, and it's an expensive car, and I think that's a big deal, right? Because my father drove one, and I was like, I have to get an expensive car. That's how I'm going to be somebody, and blah, blah, blah. Well, I drove it that day in a snowstorm, and I drove into a deer. The old Ray would have got out of the car screaming, yelling, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what I would have done. But there was none of that. In fact, nothing happened, except I felt compassion for the deer. Who am I? Who have I become? I mean, it's good, but I don't recognize myself. I get out of the car. I go to see if I can help the deer. The deer actually gets up and walks away. She was fine. It's the closest I've ever been to a deer. It was kind of surreal, actually. I was fine. I was not injured. Most people that hit a deer, they wind up in the ER. Nothing. The car, gone. Crushed. Didn't care. It's just a car. I got my cell phone. I started to call my wife to tell her what happened. At that time, we didn't live together. That's why I was leaving. I was going to my other house. And I said, why am I calling her? To dump my shit onto her? Pardon my language, sorry. There's no point in that. Why should I ruin her evening with something that didn't even bother me? So what I learned from that is you don't have to react to anything that you don't want to. It's your choice. And that's the message that I try to put forth today. And that's the work I try to do today.
Ray, thank you for sharing your experiences with us. It appears to me that you had some abilities even before your NDE. Do you think that you had potentially an NDE even before that you don't remember, or some sort of event that gave you this spiritual ability?
I don't think so. There's nothing, the only thing that I thought brought about the spirituality was the trauma of the youth and how I would put myself in those isolated meditative states for an extended period of time. Because if you know the yogis that have been doing meditation for 20 plus years, they can put themselves in that state of being where they can see the other 2/3 of the universe that we don't see. We see the material world, right? We don't see the subatomic world, but we know it's there. We know it exists. And we don't see the spiritual world, which is run by energy, but we know it's there. We know it exists. But when you're in that heightened state of awareness through meditation, you see 100% of the world, not just what's right in front of us with the 5 physical senses, because you develop the 6th, which, by the way, if you go back to the early textbooks in the 1500s, the medical text, the first original medical text said we had 6 senses and one was consciousness. But the church said, that sounds a little bit like our soul and our spirit. We don't want you playing around in there. So the scientists were like, okay, we'll stick with 5 because the church back then was too powerful. You're not going up against them. So it was taken away. So we never really got to delve into that consciousness, which is our soul, which is our spirit, and really dissect it so that we could understand how to use it. And everybody I speak to that has these abilities, the one common denominator is always trauma, because it forces you to go there. But no one wants to learn it that way. And you don't have to learn it that way. But when it happens, you push through that veil. You push through the things that are beyond what you can see, because you want to exit that situation that you're in so badly that your mind can leave your body. It is detachable, as we know from people who have out-of-body experiences as well. So learning how to utilize that is one of the greatest things that anybody could ever learn.
As a medium, have you ever had a conversation or some kind of contact with your guide that's been with you?
I have many, actually. I don't know, again, I don't know male or female. At that level, there's no physicalness, there's no body, it's just an energy, like almost like an orb. And yeah, I, I, I discovered him, so to speak, or her. And I wrote a chapter in a book called There the Whole Time. He was there the whole time. And I finally realized where he is, like when I go into my meditation, whenever I see someone, they always show up in the same spot. That's their spot. So if my wife's father comes, I know his spot is right here. Well, my guide is over here, down, lower, to the right. And because he doesn't appear like a person, he just kind of blends in with whatever's happening. And when I discovered, I tried to contact my guides, and the first thing that happened was I got this ear-piercing sound that was so overbearing that I remember it was so loud, it just dropped me to my knees, and I put my hands over my ears. And I later discovered that others have had the exact same thing when trying to contact their spirit guides. The reason is because they're on a much higher frequency that's very difficult for us to decode. But when I did find him, we found a way to communicate. And when I found him, he threw a book and a pen at me. And that's when I wrote the first book. I knew I had to write the book.
During your NDE, he told you that it's okay to come in the light. And then your father picked you up and took you out of the room. Was it his action that brought you back to your body, or do you think you were forced back into your body from the other side?
That is a great question, one that I've been tossing around for a long time. I did request to go back. Was that granted because of the request, or was that granted so I could be with you here today? I don't know. I truly don't know. But in the moment, it was because I wanted that from my dad that I never got. And that's why I wanted to go back. And then after I go back, well, I never got that. Needless to say, life went back to the way it was. And I was like, dear God, please give me a mulligan here. Give me a do-over. I want to go back to the light. And somebody recently asked me, they said, well, why do people who always want to go back to the light, why don't they just take their own lives? And I said, because you know why? When you come back, you realize that nothing really matters anymore. The things that you thought were important are no longer important. And you can go back whenever you want. So why rush it? Nothing bothers you so much anymore. There's the depression of the world, or the anxiety is lifted, and you just don't feel overwhelmed anymore. You feel like this world is something that is much smaller and easier to understand. And when it's like that, you don't have to leave it. One day I'll be at the light, and I don't fear it. I'm fine with it. But right now I got some kids that are dependent on me to stick around for a while. So, but once they're on their own and they're ready to, I already told them, I said, one day I'm not going to be here. So please take all the information I have to give you. And the other thing is, I never, ever let one of my children walk out the door without me saying, I love you, or my wife, or anybody else that I feel that way about. Because I don't know when that last day is going to be. So that's a habit for all of us. I mean, we always do that, because one of the biggest messages I get, the regret, I didn't tell them I love them. And I don't want to be on that side looking for a medium on this side to tell them I love them.
Earlier, you said that you could see the energy of the realm that we live in, like the walls and stuff, would you say that we live in something like the Matrix?
Yeah, to a degree. Only I don't think that it's being necessarily manipulated by a guy with a white beard and mustache. But yeah, I mean, when you can see energy, particles act like waves. They don't act the way we think they do. Particles also are 90% plus space and maybe 10% solid. I mean, you could argue over how much is solid because many physicists, some say there is no solid part at all, but let's go at 90-10 for the sake of argument here. The 90 is energy. The 10 is your solid matter. Now, in the subatomic world, that works perfectly. And the subatomic world makes up our world. So right now I'm standing on a floor, or I'm sitting on the floor, right? And I'm not falling through it, even though it's 90% space. My perception of it is that it's a solid, hence I'm not falling through it. But if I said to you, I'm going to build you a house and it's going to be 10% matter, 10% solid, would you buy it? No, you'd say you're crazy. Get out of here. But that really works. And ultimately, if I did build you a house, that's exactly what it would be. 90% space, 10% matter. And yet it would hold together. So there's another portion of this universe that we're in, or our existence, right? That we can't see, touch, feel, smell, but it's there. And yes, you can eventually see it. And I see it, especially at night. I really see it at night when it's dark and things are not distracting me and I'm in an idle state. That's when I can really see it. And I can just see it right in the air. I see it out of the corner of my eye. I'll see little swivels and I can see things move and I can feel them too. I'll feel them first and then I look and then I can see it. And it's wonderful. It's not distracting anymore. It's not intrusive anymore. It's great. And the energy, by the way, that's in those atoms and particles, right? That's the energy that drives the spiritual world. So we only see 33.3% of our existence. But if you open up the sixth sense, you get to see it all, hear it all, smell it all. All five senses can be utilized in the sixth if you train yourself how to do it.
How do you train yourself?
Well, that's a long answer, but that's what I'm coaching. I start to teach people exactly how to do it. And the way that I do that, most people want to learn about how does the law of attraction work? How do I get things that I want to get in life? Why is it that I use the law of attraction and it doesn't work? Okay, so first thing is you have to understand how it works from a scientific background. It works because you are thinking of an item that you visualize, right? And that visualization is turned into a vibration. The universe does not speak English, Japanese, French, or anything else. It speaks vibration. So you emit that vibration. And you must do so in a resonant state, which is your calm, relaxed state. The Earth's resonant state is 7.83 hertz. If we can get at 7.83 hertz or close, that's your resonant frequency because the Earth is harmonious with the universe. You are then harmonious with the Earth. And now you're in a position to ask for anything you want because you're going to think about it and you're going to push it out. And like attracts like. How do we know that? Because it's how our cell phones work. If I dial your number, the two frequencies connect and then we can speak to each other. My cell phone goes to your level of frequency and they match. And that's how we can communicate. A satellite dish and a radio, same thing. You turn the dial until you get to the frequency that you're trying to align. So it works exactly like a radio. And you can attract to you and not have to fight. That's the first step in understanding that. If you really want to go to the point of seeing it visually, you're going to do a lot of meditating, like the yogis do, where you'd go for a whole weekend and you don't speak and you put yourself into that environment where you're always focusing on using this. But there's so much that you can utilize simply. And I put as many of those things in the book as I possibly could so that people could use them right off the bat. You could read a chapter and do it tomorrow. And the law of attraction, I didn't think that stuff worked, but I used it. Not just once, not just twice. I mean, I really used it. I remember when my mentor taught me how to do the meditation that is very specific for manifestation. And I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. But I didn't. And it was fall, and my son had to go to college. He was going away to school, and I miscalculated the payments. And I was off by $10,000. And he was not going to be allowed to go into the dorm and move into the dorm unless I came up with $10,000. And I only had a few days to do this. So I was like, I hope this works. And I did it. My ahs, my ohms. I said everything in the way I'm supposed to say it. And it's twice a day. It's morning and night. But I did it 6 times a day. And I just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And I put a number on it. I need 10,000. I need 10,000. I didn't ask for it. I'm like, you're my partner. We're creators together. I need $10,000 and I need it now. So the first day goes by and nothing transpires. It's around, 5 o'clock. My son brings me the mail because the mail comes late, and I just threw it in the corner. But I noticed that there was this big envelope in there, and I looked at the envelope, and it was from my accountant. And I had just done my taxes, and I was like, you got to be kidding me. I asked you to give me 10, not give me a tax bill. I always owe. Every year I owe. So I put that aside, and I went back again, and I said, I need $10,000. This is for my son. He has to go to college. I messed this up. So the second day, I did it another 6 times. Finally, I decided to open up the mail, the letter from the accountant. And he always writes it the exact same way. I take it out. Thank you for your business. You owe me this much money. Okay, put that aside. Next letter says, Dear Ray, you have overpaid the government by $8,200 and something dollars and something cents. And I read it 3 times. I overpaid? That's a refund. I haven't seen one of those in years. I put that aside. I took out the next letter. It said, you have overpaid the state of New Jersey $1,200 and something dollars. The 10,000 was there on the very first day. I dropped to my knees and I wept like a child. And I thanked the universe for that.
Ray, what inspires you about your NDE?
Every inspiration that has come, if I've accomplished anything within my writing or within my helping of other people, it all came from the NDE, because that was the catalyst. That was the wake-up call. Even though I didn't believe it right away, later on, when I got to understand what was happening and what it was the catalyst for all things. And that's why a lot of people say, if you could do things all over again, would you do them differently? No. Those traumas were gifts. Everything I got was a gift. I would have to do it that way in order to be here today at the happiest moment that I've ever been in. And if anything was changed, you take away the traumas, I'm not me anymore. I got no business being here, speaking with you. It was those horrific things that led me to learn the gifts in life. So I wouldn't change a thing. And that was the catalyst, the NDE.
Your books are called The Atheist and The Afterlife and You Are Still Alive. Now Act Like It. If people want to learn more about them, do they go to your website or Amazon?
Well, you can go to Amazon or my website, which is limitlesspublications.com. I also have raycatania.com, but those books are sold in 62 countries around the world, and you can get them on any website you wish. The first one's on Audible. The second one's not Audible yet, but all other formats are readily available everywhere. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to say that.
Sure. After watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you open to that? And if so, how do they contact you?
Absolutely. If you go to raycatania.com, You can fill out the contact form, or you can just subscribe to my newsletter. But if you want to contact me, you can do it through there. And I do answer the emails, and I will answer any questions. I'm open to answering as many as I possibly can. And if they're interested in coaching, we can do a consult and talk about that as well. So yeah, I'm open to hearing from anyone. Thank you.
Do you have anything else that you're working on that you want us to know about?
Ooh, what's coming up in the future? Well, I am going to roll out a new website, which is going to have a lot more content. And it will also have courses that you can take if you don't want to do coaching, but you want to go at your own pace and you just want to learn one particular thing, such as the law of attraction, let's say, you can just take that particular course. So I'm really looking forward to that website rolling out, while I'm also working on the third book, because there's been no shortage of craziness in this life. So I've got plenty more to write about.
Well, that gives me a reason to get you back.
Yes. Yes, please do. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff.
Well, before we wrap it up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
Yeah, absolutely. Just like the title says, you're still alive, now act like it. Utilize every single day. Do something for yourself selfishly, and do something for someone else that's just for them at each and every day, because you deserve your taking care of yourself and self-care. And we also have to help each other and get them to where they want to be. So it's okay to take care of yourself, but it's also very important to pass that along to others. And if we can do that and remember that we are all one being that comes from one entity, the entity that's at the end of that light, we are all connected to that, and we're all one. So if you hurt your neighbor, you're hurting yourself, because you are connected through that divine light. Take care of each other and yourself, and be good to yourself and others.
Ray, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you. I can't thank you enough. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.